If there's one thing I know about entertainment, no matter the style or format, it's that everybody loves a big lizard. It's a fact of life. Godzilla, big fan. Kaiju and Pacific Rim, count me in. When Charizard roars at you for the first time when you're watching Pokemon at 6 years old, if that didn't inform most of my life decisions, I don't know what did. There are a ton of sick lizards, which is a great name for a punk band, in media, and I have always been on board with supporting them throughout history. My unwavering adoration does not falter with today's Star Wars Hunters character either, as Char makes a welcome addition to my roster of scaly friends. The Jolly Green Giant here is known as a Trandoshan, or a Tadoshuk. They all come from the planet Trandosha, and have a cool hunting-centric society. One of the more notable ones is Dar from the Clone Wars series. Like other lizard boys his age, he went on a rite of passage hunt for a formidable enemy to prove his worth. Unfortunately for him, his prey was a young girl named Ahsoka Tano, so I think we all know how that went. Luckily, his dad Garnuk, a much better hunter, swore revenge on Tano and sought to destroy her. Unluckily, on the other hand, Garnuk swore his revenge on Tano and sought to destroy her. So you can kind of just guess how that went for him. Man, I swear, usually these guys are really good at hunting. Of course, the most well-known Trandoshan is Bossk from episode 5, whose full name is actually... I'm not saying that. Much like Greedo, Bossk is one of the most 1980s aliens you've ever seen in your life. Fun fact, he was played by a man named Alan Harris, who has been in all sorts of things for years and years, but nobody would ever tell you that to your face. There was also a Trandoshan Jedi, which is dope as hell, but he only shows up in the comics. His name is Skier, he only has one arm, and he's a beast. Justice for Skier, by the way. Put him on TV or something. Anyway, let's refocus on the one from the game, huh? Stop trying to distract me. Char is a tank hunter, and the third one you'll unlock in the game. I would say, honestly, that he's one of the more unique characters I've ever seen, because he's not really built for combat, nor is he supposed to be honest, which is where I think most people get tripped up playing him the first time. Your first instinct is going to be to charge at enemies and shoot wildly at them. After all, you've got a scatter gun. It's supposed to make your enemies scatter, right? Why else would they name it that? Well, that gun is actually the first reason to not just attack at random, because it don't do that so good. First off, the scatter gun itself has absolutely horrible range. That's not just my personal opinion either. You might as well be at melee range before you start firing this thing. Speaking of, Char doesn't have a melee attack outside of his ultimate, which kind of feels like the one thing that would make him 10 times more playable. But we're here to talk about what he does have, I guess. And what he does have is god-awful range. Did I say that yet? Because he does. Here's an image that says that Char's main attack does 70 damage. Is that true? Yes, but only from about 5 to 10 feet away. Any further than that, and the damage begins to decrease dramatically. Here's a series of shots, all from further and further distances, showing you that you really don't need to be that far away before it drops down to a measly little 8 points. It is supremely important to not waste your bullets by firing from too far away, because the scattergun only gets 2 shots, and it takes a long time to reload. Other characters, meanwhile, have absolutely no problem filling Char full of tasty little lasers, while he slowly makes his way over to elimination range. The fun things about this gun, on the other hand, are twofold. 1, his weapon spread is absolutely massive, and while that may cause other characters to miss their shots, Char's bullets hit everywhere inside of that circle. This leads into the other very nice thing about this gun, which is how easy it is to get headshots and deal critical damage. As long as any part of the bullet shrapnel hits your enemy's head, it counts as a critical. Country hicks with their sawed-off shotguns could only dream of this. Yeehaw. Real quick before we move on to the abilities, I have to let you know that Char's critical does not double the damage, but rather increases it by half. This makes the headshot damage go from 70 to 105. Why does it do that? Honestly, no one will tell me, which is why I won't tell you either. Moving on, Char's first ability is kind of a rope, but it's not a rope, it's a laser, which is why they call it laser tether. Clever, those developers. In case you might have been confused about what it does, I'm going to refer you back to the name. You see, the laser tether is a laser that tethers you to an opponent. How do they come up with this stuff? This ability forces your prey to stick right nearby you. They can still move around a bit, but they're trapped within a small radius around Char. The tether itself does not do damage, but once you hit the first upgrade for it, you gain this lovely little ability that makes any tanks that are tethered take extra damage. Not just from you, by the way, but any of your allies that deal damage to a tethered tank will benefit from that 10 to 20% damage boost. The tether has a long cooldown, a full 12 seconds, which is why it's very important that you use it at exactly the right time. Remember, your target doesn't have to be a tank, as grabbing one of those squishy little healers and pulling them back to your group is always a good idea. Tethered hunters won't be able to use movement abilities, by the way, like Zayna's roll or Skora's adrenaline, which is why it's a great idea to grab them right before they start to run away. The tether is very simple, and following that up, Char's second ability is also extremely hunter core, quite literally being a snare trap. This is what I would call his iconic ability, and much like Diago's Mine, this limited edition collector's item comes with a special effect. You see, the trap is the only thing in the game that can, well, trap people. Anyone that steps on the thing, or at least within the 2.2 meter radius, will get trapped, being stuck in place. Hunters that are trapped can't move, but they can still use their main weapons and their abilities. As you level up, the only thing about this that will improve is the snare time, going from 2 to 3 seconds. That is, until you hit that max level, and you gain a sweet little 10% damage boost against trapped hunters. Just like with Tether, anyone on your team can benefit from this extra 10%, making it a lovely way to shred through some of those healthier hunters. Also, new enemies can get stuck in the trap even if it's already been activated, so long as that electricity is still crackling. A few things to note here, the first of which is that the cooldown is a solid 14 seconds, even longer than the tether. The neat thing is that the cooldown will begin as soon as you throw the first one down, and you can always throw another one down to replace the original. And by the way, you can hold the button down to aim, so you can line the trap up exactly where you want it to be. The trap itself, also like Diago's Mine, is destructible, meaning that if you see it, you can just shoot it to get it to break. Or if you've even already activated it, you can shoot it anyway to get it to end early. The last detail I gotta add is that the laser tether will pull enemies out of the trap, so you cannot combo both damage boosts. You gotta choose one or the other. Can't have your cake and eat it too. In this case, the cake is bullets in your enemy's head, but I think the metaphor still stands. Char's final ability is the real reason he stands as a powerhouse among the already strong tank class. See, Trandoshans have that neat little reptile thing where they can quickly regrow lost limbs and heal injuries. Char himself might be able to do that too, but if he can, he just kind of chooses not to. Instead, just like Dr. Curtis Connors, our lizard downs a green potion and becomes literally invincible. Lightsabers, missiles, even bullets to the open eye. None of this phases him. In fact, it straight up heals him. Can you imagine how insane it would be to get shot point blank and then to feel healthier afterwards? Regen Booster is what Powerade always wished it could be. As soon as you drink it, Char begins to regain health. The amount varies by level, but it stays between 90 and 100. The real benefit of this ability is that any damage he takes during those seconds is immediately converted into healing. I've brought this up in past videos, but shooting Char while he's glowing green from this ability is a lot like getting angry at the Mafia that they're not digging your grave fast enough and handing them a nicer shovel. One of the interesting things about this ability is that there is technically a maximum amount of healing that you can get from converting enemy damage. This increases by level, but maxes out at 225. Adding in that 100 HP that you'd be restoring at top level, this maxes out at 325 total healing. I wouldn't personally recommend waiting until you're all the way down to 25 HP to activate this ability, but it's nice to know that you can. Want to know something slightly more interesting? For some reason, the game doesn't want you to know how long the cooldown is on the regen booster. I have no idea why this is, but I have an insatiable need to learn things that don't matter, so I figured it out on my own. According to my computer, after the 2-ish seconds of healing, it takes about 13 seconds to actually refresh the ability itself. Take that, people who probably weren't even trying to hide information from me in the first place. Those are Char's abilities. He's got one more thing before we talk about his ultimate, but it's not really an ability, which is why they don't call it that. Instead, Char has a talent called Dig In. This is just a background passive effect that makes it so he takes less knockback. This is because he has big bones, and because he was on the J1 team in high school football. And I'll let you figure out if either of those things is actually true. Quick tangent, there are a few hunters that have talents, but the game is weird and inconsistent about the language. For instance, I would consider Zayna's combat medic to be a talent, but the game calls it a passive ability. At the same time, Reeve has a talent called Vicious Leap, but it does damage and has a cooldown, and you have to activate it on your own. So wouldn't that just be another active ability? Pillbush's Mechanical Leap is the exact same way, except with knockback instead of damage, but they still refer to it as a passive. Imara's Tracking Scan is a passive, but it happens on its own, so wouldn't it be a talent? I feel like I'm trying to decode hieroglyphics, but I've been handed 3 separate Rosetta Stones, and all of them are fake. I have suffered from migraines since I was a kid, so we're gonna stop talking about this before I trigger another one. You stink a little bit. Char's ultimate is a unique one, and it's the only time he seems to lose his cool during a fight. They call this one Ferocious Hunt. And they're pretty right about that. Storing his scattergun on his back, Char switches over to melee-only mode. This gives him a speed boost and grants his outfit some cool glowy effects. Char's swipes will do 40 damage each, and more importantly, stun the enemies he hits. Granted, this ultimate doesn't last a very long time, but you can extend it by getting eliminations with it, which will be pretty easy when your enemies are just laying on the floor waiting for you to cut them into strips of jerky. The swipes are pretty narrow though, so make sure you've got your claws lined up the right way. Oh, and by the way, activating the ultimate will not reload your gun, so be careful when you use it because you don't want to pop out of it and end up slotting bullets back into your weapon while the people you were just trying to murder stand up around you. See, people don't usually like it when you try to murder them. There are a couple of ways to use this ultimate, and the best strategy depends on how many people there are nearby. If it's just you and an enemy or two, knocking them to the ground and focusing... Oh, okay. Is that right? If it's just you and an enemy or two, knocking them to the ground and focusing on one until they're dead is a great way to really shred some important documents. The documents being your opponent's lives, of course. If you've got a whole squad to eviscerate, you'll have a better time knocking them down individually and relying on your teammates to fill them full of bullets and lasers. Granted, you may run out of ult a bit quicker this way, but crowd control is always important, especially at higher ranks. So that's Char's whole kit. Makes sense? Good. Now, I see you going for the button to close this video, and I gotta say, stop. Stop it. Come back. Don't do that. Quit it. I have more things to say. Char is a tank hunter, according to the game, but if we're being honest with ourselves, he's really more of a support hunter, minus the ability to heal his teammates. You aren't really meant to use him as a frontliner, but more as a way to set the rest of your squad up for success. This is definitely a good character to use when you have friends you can actually talk to in the game, because you can set up for some very good coordination. Setting up traps and tethering your opponents so you can drag them back to the fight where your teammates can rip them up is a huge part of Char's viability. That's not to say he can't stand on his own, by the way, which you'll need to learn how to do, or else you'll get stuck real quick when you hit the get the most eliminations in Squad Brawl part of his mastery track. This is one of the more frustrating mastery quests in the game, right next to Chaos's deal 50,000 melee damage and Skora's brand new Mastery 2 quests, which asks you to get 1,000 kills as the little Rhodian. This stuff seems impossible, no?
I got 2 words for you. Impossible.
Well, nothing's impossible, Mario. Only improbable. Getting Char to the point where he can get consistent eliminations is going to rely more on your ability to play the character than it is on your ability to just level him up. While the leveling certainly helps, Char is actually one of the characters that changes the least. Not to be that guy, but get good? Otherwise, I just have a few basic tips. First off, don't put a trap on the control point unless you know that you and your team will be there to eliminate whoever gets stuck in it. Otherwise, your opponent will still take the point. My recommendation with this is essentially the same as with J3DI's faux pull. You don't want the enemy team in the point, so trap them outside of it. Place the trap right at the edge, so anyone who gets stuck in it won't be able to make it, but they'll still be close enough by to be an easy target. This advice goes for the tether too. No need to drag hunters into the point, just get them close enough that your team will get a good shot at them. Speaking of the tether, always keep an eye on the bubble because it will only light up when someone is in range. You don't have to be facing them exactly either. They just need to be nearby and within view. This neat little grab is a lot more helpful than you'd think too, because you can use it to pull people down from higher platforms if you line it up right. My last recommendation would be to practice. Genuinely. I think a lot of people don't use the training grounds in this game, and while it could use a lot of improvements, it's still pretty good for a couple of things. One of which is straight up target practice. Are you struggling to hit headshots? Let me ask you something. Have you tried trying to hit headshots? Because there's a bunch of droids in here programmed to get shot in the head. Look at their heads. Come on, don't they look perfect for shooting? Shooting with bullets? Come on, try it. That's about all I got for you this time, my friends. I've kind of said it already, but Char might be the first character in the game where it's more important that you actually learn how to play him rather than just leveling him up. Don't get me wrong, they're nice upgrades, but you know what's nicer? Believing in yourself. Can't do that? Well then, just try believing in the me that believes in you. Got it? Thanks for watching this one. I hope it helped. I know Char is a bit of a weird hunter. Now is a great time to consider helping me for helping you. Go ahead and hit those like and subscribe buttons. If you want to support me even more, you can share this video with your friends. And beyond that, you can go and donate to my Ko-fi and eventually my Patreon pages. And honestly, I appreciate you just watching too. It means a lot to me that people actually like these guide videos. Remember, even if you aren't Char in real life, you can still be the greatest hunter of all time. See you later, Arena fans.